The Loop.
The Loop. You have the divine spark. The Loop.
Do or do not. There is no try.
The Loop.
Give me your roar.
Hey there, this is Misha, and welcome to episode number 20 of The Loop, the podcast where I interview career coaches and experts on everything from job interview advice to finding more meaning in your work and much, much more. Today's episode is with Kerri McKinney, who was a recruiter, executive recruiter, and manager for several Fortune 500 companies like PayPal, Indeed, and Amazon, as well as some amazing startups. She's worked in different industries, different roles, and has had some unique experiences with burnout. And she today shares her story working at these companies and some of the warning signs that she sort of reflected on in retrospect, and sort of what caused her to end up eventually leaving her job, trying another job, and then realizing that this is just not for me, and eventually taking a break and sort of starting to do her own thing now. So if you are interested in the topic of sort of work-related stress and burnout, if you feel like you perhaps are going through this yourself, or maybe there are some warning signs that you have noticed, or you're not really sure if they're warning signs, if you should just take a break or not, or whatever it is that you should do or not do, I think we go over that. We go over all these sort of situations that could arise and small things that you can do to de-stress, but then also how to know when perhaps it's time to move on, when things have just gotten to a point where it's no longer worth sacrificing your emotional and physical well-being. So there's a lot in there in the conversation, and a lot of it is Kerri's story. So I think, I really enjoyed the conversation. And if any of those topics sound interesting, then I think you will too. Hey, Kerri, how's it going?
Hey, good. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. Just getting my day started and excited to chat today. We've been talking a lot, I feel like, in the last few months. And I would really love to maybe start with more about you and your story, because I think in our work together, it's mostly been around career coaching and talking about tech and all these things. We've done a couple of events together, but I know that, you worked in tech for a long time. And then I guess recently, don't know the exact timing, you sort of left the industry and now you're doing your own thing. And, you've gone through some experiences and burnout, which I can relate to as well. So I'd love to maybe start there and understand a little bit more about your career and sort of where you're at right now.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a good starting point. I had quite the run in the tech industry, I'll be honest with you. I feel like I was definitely one of those people who was all about climbing the corporate ladder and really like chasing the title, like chasing, the next promotion that I was supposed to have. And I'd say, my career really started off at Indeed when I joined, when they were a lot smaller than they are now. And that was when I just became, a workaholic. And I always was looking for, the opportunity to take on more, and how can I do more to show my value with the company that I'm at. And I loved my time there. It opened up so many other doors for me to take on other roles at companies like Envision and Amazon. And after I left Amazon, where I was a recruiting leader, for a few months after I realized, the culture is just different, and it wasn't something that I felt like was a good fit for me. So I made the jump and went back to a startup type of environment where I was leading recruiting and sourcing for a company called Terminal, and I loved the company. I mean, we were doing really fun things. We were expanding into different countries. We were hiring for really cool startups that needed to hire engineers quickly. And I had a team of, it was around 20 between my direct and indirect reports. And I had been there for a little over a year, and I started getting this feeling of like almost dreading going to work every day. And it
Mm.
wasn't because of the people, it was just I was drained. I was completely overwhelmed and overworked. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought to myself, these people deserve a leader who is excited to go to work every day and who wants to be there and who can show up in a way that they deserve to show up. And so I made the decision to leave that job, and it was hard because I was in a head of talent role. I was on track to be promoted to a VP of talent, which forever had been like my dream. Like,
Mm.
if I got to VP of talent, like I was winning at life. Like that was like the end
Yeah.
all be all for me. And
Mm.
even before I left, they had said, you know, can we give you this title? Like, will that help? And I thought, at first I was like, well, yes. But then I took a step back before, making a decision. And I'm like, no, like it's not about the title anymore. It's just, I am so burned out with the work I've been doing and leading this many people. So I
Mm.
made the decision to leave Terminal in my leadership role, and I took on a role as executive recruiter for a really cool venture capital studio based out of the Bay. And
Mm.
I really liked that specific company because they were very mission driven. So all of the companies that they
Mm.
had founded and started were, one was around like autism services.
Mm.
Another one was helping like a home health company. So I thought, okay, this surely will make me happy. I'm in a high level
Mm-hmm.
individual contributor role working with mission driven companies, and
Mm.
I was there for 2 months, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. It didn't help my feeling of being burned out. It didn't help my motivation. And so
Mm.
I made the decision to leave and kind of go off on my own and never looked back.
Wow. What
Yeah.
was the gap between that last venture startup you joined, um, and Terminal? Like, did you have some time off, or did you sort of find this new role, mission driven role, and okay, this is more aligned with my soul and what I want to do, and then sort of did that, or was there some like period where you were sort of exploring a bit?
That's such a good question. No, I took a whole week off. Woohoo. And was like, this is it. Like, this will change my life. 1 week off. And in hindsight, like, you're right. Like, I think I should have taken a lot more time to really reflect and take a step back and think if this is what I
Mm.
wanted. But, I grew up in such a career focused, work driven environment where
Mm.
I never saw my parents take time off between jobs. I mean, my parents now still
Mm-hmm.
have the same job that they have for 20 years. Like, that's just
Wow.
who they are. But
Mm-hmm.
um, I think I wasn't at the point in my life where I realized like it's okay to take time off. It's okay to put yourself first and do things for you. And so I
Mm.
only took that week. And
Mm.
it even when you say that, like in hindsight, I'm like, I wonder if I would have taken like a month, would I have ever taken that job? Probably not.
Mm.
Because it
Mm.
didn't take me very long to realize that I had made the wrong decision, not in terms of the company, but just what I needed to do for myself to get me back to a place where I was taking care of, my mental health.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing that. I think there's a lot that you went through, and you experienced this like burnout, and you were obviously managing a big team, and tried. It sounds like tried different things to sort of address whatever was going on, but at the end of the day, I was like, no, this is all just too much, and so um, ended up going off, and now you're doing your own thing, which we can also talk about. But what went wrong? Like, in
Yeah.
this experience of your approach or mentality or emotions or whatever it was. What do you think went wrong there?
So, I've done a lot of thinking on this, and
Mm,
I've unpacked a lot and kind of almost looked at like, okay, where did I start going downhill? And I think there's two big things. There's two different parts to it. The first is for so long, for so much of my life, got I always measured the value of myself on my work. So
mm-hmm,
I started working when I was 14 years old, at the local
mm,
Dairy Queen serving ice cream.
mm,
And I always had a job since I was 14. Like,
mm,
there was no breaks. I mean, maybe like a week or two in between. Even in
mm.
college, though, like I worked as much as I could. And
Yeah.
so my self worth was always from my job. And because of that, I was always pushing myself to be the top performer. And I wanted to be the
Mm-hmm,
person who everyone would go to when they needed something. And I was
mm-hmm,
like, for a lot, like if
mm,
they needed something done that was outside of my job description, like go
mm.
see Kerri, she'll take it on. And so
Yeah.
I think having that mentality really, really hurt me in the long run because I wasn't looking to myself for my worth. Like I was looking to my job.
Mm,
Um, and then I also just think, kind of tied into that hand in hand, like I was always such a people pleaser. I always,
mm-hmm,
always wanted to make everyone happy, even if it meant sacrificing my own happiness. And so I
mm,
would take on those projects and I would work ridiculous hours. I was always the person who, if you sent an email or an instant message to, I would respond like that. Like,
mm,
if Kerri didn't respond within 30 minutes to an email, it was like, oh my God, is she dead? Like, where did she go?
mm,
Like, I was
mm,
always, always there. And so I think
mm,
those two factors of just not putting myself first and paying attention to how I was feeling and caring so much about what others were feeling, I
mm.
never had the chance to even catch myself getting to the point of burnout until it was too late.
Yeah. Was it not? I think internally, obviously, this is easier to look at in retrospect and like, okay, this is happening, but externally, if someone were looking at you, like I don't know, your manager or mentor or something, like were there any clear signs that this was happening to you, like that you were, I don't know, having panic attacks or you were just being more impatient, I don't know, whatever it might be, like were there any signs?
Yeah, I mean, I think for most people, no. I think on the
Mm,
surface, no. I did. And it's funny because I look back on it now and I'm like, how did people not see this? Like, I did
mm,
start getting more short fused. I started
mm-hmm,
getting, I started getting a little more outspoken in meetings, but not in a good way. Like, my
mm,
frustrations would start to show more.
mm,
Um, and even like, when it came to my team, which I felt horrible about, but like I started having to move my one on ones a lot because I just would have those days where, and we're all going to have those days, but mine were more than, you know, often than not. But I would have those days where I'm
mm,
like, I just can't talk to anybody. Like, I
mm.
cannot hop on a Zoom call today. And so I don't think it was as noticeable as someone would think, or I was just so blind to it that maybe they saw it and I didn't, you know?
Yeah. Maybe it's this is like from my experience. I was a manager for a bit as well in recruitment, more on the agency side. But I remember a little bit less burnout, but more just like disengagement
Yeah.
towards the end of my job, where because I was a manager, I could sort of do what I wanted without too much oversight, and
Yeah.
so no one could really see that anything was wrong because I just like skip a meeting or say I was going to the gym or I had another meeting and I was just like at home sleeping.
Yeah.
So and that was very easy to get away with until eventually I was like, well, wait a second, I'm having more bad days than good days, and that's not good.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you disengaged is a really good way to put it, especially I think at the beginning,
Mm,
because I think that was another big sign for me is like
hmm.
I stopped going to meetings unless I absolutely had to be there. And I think as
Yeah.
a culture, especially in tech, like I think we have too many meetings to begin with, so that's like a whole
Yeah.
different topic, but
Yeah.
I like I would not show up last minute, or I started trying to set more like better boundaries, which was good,
Mm,
but I don't know if I necessarily did it in one the best way, and two, people were already so used to how I worked. When Kerri started
mm,
setting boundaries and telling people she's not going to meetings, or
mm.
declining meetings if there was no description in the invite, it was like, well, what's happening? Like, this isn't who
Yeah.
we hired,
Yeah. Yeah. It really, I think there's expectations there, like you're talking about, and a lot of
Yeah.
this really depends on the individual and sort of your tolerance for pain and your self awareness. And there's all these things we can talk about, but I'm wondering, like for someone that's listening to our conversation, listening to your experience, how would they perhaps notice some of these signs and like signs of burnout, like to the extent that you had it where you're like, I'm done, I can't even work full time anymore for a while, and um, that sort of level of disengagement. Because I think obviously people get stressed, you have the short-term stress, and then you like take a break and then you're fine, or maybe you just have a bad day. And so people often say like, oh, I'm feeling so burnt out, and I'm like, are you really? Because if you're really burnt out, like you're going to be on the couch for the next 2 months,
Yeah.
not being able to look at your computer or do anything. So I think the word burnout is obviously very there's various levels of that, and so
Yep.
the burnout you're talking about is really like, okay, I'm done. So how do you know if you're getting to that point?
Yeah, that's a good question. And in just relation to what you said, like I had gotten to the point where when I left my last job with the venture capital
Mm,
studio, I didn't touch LinkedIn for I think 6 months. And
mm,
that was like unheard of for me. PS, like my algorithms on LinkedIn are so messed up now because I went for so long not being active on it. But I was to
mm,
that point where I was like, I can't look at my computer. I couldn't look at Slack. I couldn't look at
mm,
LinkedIn. I didn't even want to check my email. Like it was like that
mm,
bad. And I think there's a lot of different ways that people can really start becoming more aware of how they're feeling. I mean,
mm,
you have to pay attention to how your body is feeling and what your body's telling you. And a really good way that I like to gauge my level of energy and happiness at my job is like when you go into a meeting or when you go into like a one-on-one with someone, like is their energy in the environment, is that lifting you up, or are you leaving that meeting feeling like a lot lower than when you went into the meeting? And I want to say Zoom because a lot of times it's Zoom,
yeah.
but like we have to start paying attention to that kind of stuff. Like, are we putting ourselves in a situation where we're being lifted up or we're being pushed down? Because if you're going to
Mm,
continue to allow yourself to be around the environment that is going to make you feel worse than you did before you even got there, like that's a big sign for me.
mm-hmm,
um and I think
mm,
that's something everyone should be aware of. And when you and I think that also ties to like finding a company that aligns with the way that you want to work and what your values are. And
mm,
obviously that's kind of easier said than done, but you have to find those companies that they're okay if you don't turn your Zoom on for every meeting because you just aren't feeling it that day.
mm-hmm,
And I think that's just really feeling into how you show up and how it feels when you
mm.
show up at the things that you're required to do at work. I think that goes a long, long way to being able to tell if if you're in the environment where you might want to start thinking about doing something differently.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a distinction here in like what's chronic and what's acute, because if
Yeah.
you may have like a really stressful project every few months or whatever, right? And then you're going into some of those meetings. It's okay. That's a bit annoying, or like I'm a bit tired, or there's some other life situations that are not related to your work, which are making you feel that way. So there's all these factors that one could consider, right? But
Yeah.
then maybe what you're saying is like if this is chronically happening for like several weeks or months
Yes.
at a time, where you're going in, you're like feel drained, next meeting feel drained, I have to like have 3 coffees and just whatever other addictions of your choice to keep you sort of focused and
Yeah.
awake, um, and then you're just like not you know you're just not enjoying it, and that goes on for too long, right? That's the issue, perhaps.
Absolutely. And I mean, I have on my coaching page now, like, we, you spend way too much of your 9 to 5 every day, hate, like, having to not enjoy what you're doing.
Hmm.
And, like, so many people, their job is just their life. And I mean, you do, like, you spend more time doing that besides sleeping at night. Well, some people don't even sleep as much as they work every day. But that's a whole different
Hmm.
issue. Um, but
Hmm.
you, like, you don't have to work someplace where you're miserable every day. And like you
Hmm.
said, like sometimes you're going to have those things that are going on in your life that are going to make your job harder. But if you get through those things, or you're just not excited about the work you're doing anymore, like that should be a big, big red flag for you that like maybe it's time to do something differently. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of times people get comfortable, um, in the job that they're in. So they think that this is just easy. But is it easy, or is it really sucking the energy out of you and you just aren't aware of what the job is doing? Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Um, and then in terms of the opposite of this, so like perhaps like when you felt, obviously you're going in and you're just feeling drained, and maybe that causes you to be more irritated or frustrated, or yeah, just eventually sort of resentful and not wanting to go back into work. But then like the opposite of that, what does the opposite of that feel like? For someone, obviously not every day is going to be great. Not every day is going to be like I love what I'm doing and like everything's amazing. So that's not what you're saying, but in general, how is that feeling? How does that feel to go in and be like, oh yeah, this is exciting? Like, what does that look like in yourself
Yeah.
or other people?
I mean, for me personally, I have to believe in the work that I'm doing.
Hmm.
And like when I feel like I'm actually contributing in a positive way, like for me, that's a big, big sign that gets me going all the time.
Yeah.
Um, I think, I think too, like you have to look at it kind of at a larger scale and think like, are the things that are sucking the life out of me, like, are these little
Hmm.
things? Like, could I have a conversation with my manager or the leadership team and talk to them? Like, is this
Hmm.
something that could easily be changed?
Hmm.
But if you aren't excited about even like the culture at the company, and you don't
Hmm.
feel like it's a supportive environment where you can kind of have those conversations that you need, you're never going to be
Hmm.
able to get excited about the job that you're, going to every day.
Yeah.
I mean, you should want to, more often than not, I believe, like you should be excited to log in. Like, and
Hmm.
I think the more that people set boundaries and have that healthy work life balance,
Hmm.
it gets easier to have something to look forward to. Because if you are just working all day, every day, and don't have a break, and don't let
Hmm.
yourself have a break, you're never going to have a chance to look forward to doing anything because you're always going to be working. So you have to be able to let yourself have those moments of like, ooh, I can't wait to work on this project, or I'm excited to catch up with this team member. And if you find
Hmm.
like you don't have those moments, it's probably a sign that you need to start looking for something new.
I guess maybe starting before getting into some of the techniques and tips you might have there, like can you talk a bit more about like, what do you really mean by boundaries? Like, what is that concept? What does that mean for you? And how can people think about that?
That's such a big question. It's a good
In
one
this
though, but
context. Yeah.
like boundaries are tough. I mean, I think boundaries are making sure, I believe, like making sure that you're not doing things just because other people want you to or expect you to, and you're doing things because you are doing them for you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like when that ties to email and Slack, like in my case, people would send me an email or a Slack message, and I would immediately respond because I thought that's what they want me to do. They're asking me a question, they're asking me something, they need something from me, so I must respond as soon as possible. And that's just not the case. And I think we all get so tied up in that type of mindset where we think we need to respond right away, or that something bad will happen to me at my job if I don't respond right away, that we don't even stop to think first, like, okay, do I need to be responding to this now, or can I finish what I'm doing and take care of this later? And I really learned, like, I wasn't being present at all when I was at work, because I would get caught up in these cycles and just do what I needed to be doing and move from one thing to the next. And I was never just stopping to pause and being like, okay, is this where I should be focusing my time on? Or should I be doing something else? And I think that comes down like that. It's just so related to the response time and just putting yourself first and not needing to give people what you think they want right away. And something that was really helpful for me that I feel like I started telling people a lot is remembering that the company is not going to blow up if Kerri doesn't respond right away. Like the company is not going to tumble and crumble to the ground if Kerri is not responding to an email within an hour. Like obviously there are some things that are mission critical that you work on, but at the end of the day, like we all are this one person in this bigger company working toward the same goal, and it's okay if we're putting ourselves first and taking time to think consciously and mindfully about what we're doing. And the more that we can really, like, I think stop to do that and ask ourselves, like, okay, do I need to be responding now, or can I wait and take care of this after? That will protect your mental health a lot from having you stop doing so many things at once.
Yeah, for sure. I wonder if it's like, it's also obviously easier for some people than others, depending on your upbringing and even your role, I would imagine. Because when I think of something really creative, like, if you're a writer, an editor, or like a developer or a designer, you sort of have this built-in creative time, right? And deep work time that is sort of it's pretty explicit in the role, right? And so it's like the boundary is almost set there for you. And developers will have their own like part of the office that's quiet and cut off from everyone else for that reason. Whereas if you're, I was a recruiter too, so like you're talent acquisition or sales or marketing and all these other roles, it's like you don't really have that. So I'm not saying it's necessarily easier for a developer. I think there's also some perhaps traits that you might have as a developer and getting into that role. But it's interesting to think about that, like, the nature of the role and like what you're doing might make it harder to set those boundaries.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think it's important. My word for this year was intentional, and just really being intentional about everything I'm doing. And so I think it's important to, when you start your job, or even if you're not starting a new job, but if you are in your current position and you're like, I have to start doing something differently, like looking at the things you need to get done every day, every week, and then just being intentional about the work you're doing. I think a lot of times, like we've seen more and more people put blocks of time on their calendar to be like working time, Well, how many times a day do you see people just, oh, you can schedule over that. Like, you can schedule over that. It's just my work time, Like, we have to be able to follow through on the things that we're doing. And I think also like communicating to others, which is I think another really hard thing to do. Like, these are my boundaries. Like, these are my non-negotiable times that I absolutely cannot do meetings, or, this is my non-negotiable work time, because some people work better independently in the mornings versus at night or in the afternoons. And so I think it's like speaking up about your boundaries, I think is just as hard as setting them in the first place, but you're never going to be able to get anywhere unless you're acknowledging that, whatever works best for you in the job that you're doing is what you need to succeed in the role that you were hired for.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's definitely conflict there, or there can be conflict if you have strong boundaries, right? You're like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not doing that. And then you might piss off other people, or they may not get what they want. So they're not going to be happy, but that's okay.
Yes. And just in relation to what you said about like the different roles, like someone in a developer role is going to have a schedule that looks very different than someone who's in a recruiter role or someone who's in a marketing role. And so you have to be able to respect other people's schedules and how they work best, just like you want people to expect yours. And not everyone's going to get it. There's always going to be those people who just believe that you should join a meeting regardless of when it's put on your calendar, or you should respond back by a certain time. And the more that you can just continue to hold firm and stay strong to what you know is best for you, the easier it will get, and people will just realize like that's just how they work, and you can take it or leave it.
I feel like it becomes a lot more apparent also in working remotely or in a distributed team, because it's just like you don't have the facial cues and the relationships in the same way, and so you're just like, all you see is just like, oh, they're online or they're offline, or like, I don't know, it just becomes a little bit harder to read, and it's also more stressful in my experience. But were you working remote most of the time, or how was your
I like to tell people that I worked remote before it was cool. My first remote job was in 2010.
Okay, wow.
I was like talk about no boundaries. I mean, I remember being in a meeting on the phone, hiding in my bedroom closet with my child, who was like 2, standing outside yelling ferociously for me. And I was like creeped down, and I was like, I would talk and I would mute, and then I would unmute and talk really fast, and then I would mute. And like, I mean, this was before like it was even okay to have kids around when you were working. But yeah, I mean, I think the remote aspect of it just makes it so much, it can make it challenging if you're not working in a company who's very, very much, future of work focused, and has those expectations that they want the person to put themselves first, regardless of, what's going on at work.
Yeah. Well, so what other stuff have you tried that maybe worked for you? If there's anything you want to share on that, like for setting boundaries or anything else as you're going through this experience as a manager and talent acquisition lead. I mean, it sounds like a lot of stuff didn't work, obviously, and you left, but like, I'm sure there's some stuff that did, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think also like I had gotten into such a place of not having any boundaries at work that when I did start trying to do them, like again, like people were just like, she's not like, who is this person? But I think there are ways that you can do it in that doesn't come across so like abrasive. So I always recommend people like you gotta use the pause notifications on Slack. Like that is so huge. I forever did not use that. Like I would just always want to be available, and I'd always want to know when someone sent me a message. And so I did start pausing them, and I would have my like working times where I wouldn't get messages. I actually would close it on my desktop because I knew if it was open, even if I wasn't getting notifications, like I just habitually would go there. And I think also like, I think using and I'm going to use Slack just because I feel like so many companies are using it now, but I think you can even do this with like other software tools, chat tools. But like the update where like the status update, like use that status update to tell people like I am not available. We'll respond to messages tomorrow morning, or I stepped out for a few hours, we'll be back now. Like use that to really set the expectation up front. And I think that helps a ton to just have people wondering like, well, what's she doing? Is she just not responding? Or like it's being intentional about it. I think that helps so much.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was a challenge for me as well, especially with the emails. And it made it a lot easier because when I was in the office, I could just leave the office and like, go have a meeting, and you'd have these moments where you're talking to people and meeting people. And so you just wouldn't be on your emails. And then you would come in the office and like, okay, now I have to check them. So it was sort of built into the online, offline world. But with, just being online all the time, it's just like you cycle through all your apps, right? You just like cycle through stuff, you just check all your shit. And then you're like, now I'm tired, my brain hurts, and then you don't want to talk to anyone. So
so two things that come to mind when you say that. Like the first, we have to stop checking our phones the first thing in the morning. Like you should not be picking up your phone and checking your work email as the first thing you do every day. You have to take that time at the beginning of the day to do things for yourself. Whether that's go for a walk, whether that's work out, whether it's meditate, whether it's write, like there has to be a gap between when you wake up and get out of bed and go to work. Like you can't just start immediately, because that is just going to set you up for complete failure. And that is one of the easiest ways I think you'll burn out. I definitely recommend like turning, even if you have your work email on your phone, like you can easily just turn it off. So maybe, if you should always do it when you're on vacation, but if you need to, like turn it off at night and don't turn it back on until you get to your computer to really start your day. And something that I have been doing that has been so helpful for me, because I am such like I'm such a routine person, and I'll find myself picking up my phone and I'll like check Instagram and check Facebook. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I don't even know why I'm clicking these buttons. Like, I don't care what's happening here, but it's just a habit. So now I've started moving the apps on my phone. So I'll put them in different locations, and it truly, truly helps me not have to like habitually go and open them because it's not there.
So you delete them all. You don't delete them. You just like move them around so you don't remember where they are. Yeah, you sort of trick yourself a bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it has helped tremendously.
Yeah, it seems like a really small thing, but it's
it is. But I do it every time I catch myself getting into like the like obsessing. Yeah, the loop thing. That's the loop on the loop. It's perfect.
There's many references, self-references that we could make. But yeah,
absolutely.
So no, I like that with the phones. I mean, it's like little things like that add up to some more minutes or hours of concentration that you can give yourself. There's like the grayscale, right? You can change your phone to grayscale as well, and so all your screen is just black and white. And since all of like our brains are really tied to colors, and all these companies use color as a way to grab our attention. So when everything's in black and white, you're like, well, what the fuck is all this stuff? Like you don't even recognize anything. It's just like the same. It's like the same just jumble of little buttons.
I'm
and it's
so
really hard to
that.
identify. Yeah, it's like which app is what? Like you have no idea. You have to like look at each one and like read each one, and it's quite exhausting.
Really?
So yeah,
But I
grayscale
feel
it
like
and
it
then
would,
move him around, and then you'll be like, what is this
you'll be
device?
like, I have no idea what I'm looking at right now. But I think that's good though. Like, I think sometimes we
Yeah.
need that because we get, and this is like kind of tied to like mindfulness, but like we get into those habits and like those cycles, those loops of doing the same thing every day and just not even thinking about the actions that we're making.
Yeah.
And we all have to get in the habit of cutting, like breaking the cycles and stop doing things for the sake of that's just what we're used to. And the more that I think people can really become present with stopping and pausing, even in the mornings, like before you start work, like, okay, what do I absolutely need to get done today? You know, it will help you to just get out of the system of just doing the same thing because that's just what you've, been doing every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just these like we can talk about drastic changes, right? We can talk about leaving your job or, doing, changing industries or doing your own thing. But at a very micro level is like just working on yourself first and then, okay, getting some space between whatever is going on. Assuming you're not, if you're completely overwhelmed, then obviously you need to take some time off. But it just like using these little tricks here to just break that cycle
Yeah.
of whatever it is that you're doing that is not making you happy in your work. That's just like a starting point, right? And then like from there,
Yes.
maybe you can notice whatever is going on.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, like the more that you continue to break the cycle and stop, even if you like, I encourage everyone like to really, really feel like and listen to your body. And so if, like I had mentioned earlier, like if you go into a meeting and you leave and you feel just drained, like stop. Like don't keep working. Don't go start responding to emails. Like stop and listen to yourself and ask yourself like, okay, what is it about the experience I just had that is making me feel this way? Is it the person? Is it the topic of the meeting? Is it how long the meeting was? Is it that I was on camera? Like you will be able to figure out what it is that's causing it, but most of us just don't stop to listen to ourselves enough to figure out what the actual answer is. We just try to continue pushing it instead of taking a moment to pause and listen. And I think that is just such a game changer if people can start doing that more consistently.
Yeah, so just putting in a pause afterward, before and afterwards, perhaps. But what just on that example, it's really interesting that you talk about going into a meeting, talking to someone, you leave the meeting, you're drained, you don't have energy, and then you're saying, well, just sit there for a minute and actually ask yourself, well, how do I feel, and why do I feel this way, and what are the sorts of those are just sort of big open questions, and for someone that's not used to asking those questions, it can be kind of hard. What kind of things can pop up
Yeah.
if you ask
So
those questions?
I'll give you an example. So when I was still working at my big girl corporate job leading teams, I'm not going to use any names, but I remember there was one person specifically where I would leave the meeting and I would just feel like grumpy and I would be like more annoyed than I was before I started this meeting. And like it happened a few times and I was never like, I would just leave and be like, oh, like I feel crappy, but I'm just going to continue pushing on. And then when I started like really thinking about it and like stopping, I'm like, going into this meeting with this person is like, it's kind of making me feel belittled and it's kind of making me feel like I'm not equal. And so all of these other, those type of feelings started coming up. And now, like I had a meeting today with a client I've been working with for a few weeks, and I wasn't in like this super excited, like I get to have a like hour-long meeting today with someone. Like I was kind of tired this morning, but I went into this meeting, and by the end of it, I was so energized. I was so like pumped up, and I was like, that was a great meeting. And I realized it's because like, well, one, I was doing something that I'm so passionate about, and I just love like helping people through it. But like the difference in my energy, how I felt at the end of that meeting today versus the meeting that I had when I was still working at Terminal, like it was night and day. And it was just so incredible to like observe the difference that I felt, because one meeting had me all like energized, and I was like, I want to go find 5 more clients to work with who are just like him, because like I feel great. Instead of being like, oh, that meeting is finally over and I don't want to have to do that again for another week. Like you're always going to have some, I don't know if reaction's the right word, but like you're always going to have something that comes from the meeting that you're just in, and you have to start paying attention to how it's making you feel. That was kind of a long-winded answer, but I think
No,
that
I
makes
mean,
sense.
it makes sense, and like comparing it also. So just having, comparing it before and after, right? Okay, how do I feel now? How do I feel at the end of this meeting? Do I feel the same? Do I feel worse? Do I feel better? A little bit better, a
Yeah.
little bit worse. And then you comparing that to other people that perhaps are other types of meetings or other times of day, right? There's always different variables that you could sort of start to look at. Um,
Yeah.
but like, how do you deal with that in the case of like, you do have someone, right? Let's say, and this probably happens to a lot of people, like what you're talking about. There's this one person that you would work with, and you'd go in, and like the meeting always makes you sort of feel grumpy, or like at worst you just get pissed off, and it's like, ugh, like I can't deal with this person, right? Um,
Yep.
and you don't know why you feel that way. You just there's some conflict, there's some resistance, there's something there. Like, what do you do with that?
So there's a lot. I mean, obviously, we're all going to work in jobs where there's going to be someone who probably isn't, you're not jiving with. Like, you just, there's always, nothing's ever perfect.
Yeah.
But you have to really, like, you have to weigh the pros and cons. And, like, if this is someone who you have to work very closely with, who is consistently, you're interacting with day after day, and it's just,
Mm-hmm.
it's not making you feel good to go to
Mm-hmm.
work. Like that may be a sign like, hey, maybe I need to start looking for other, opportunities.
Mm.
Um, and I think that's like that's something that I cannot stress more to people is like you should never feel like you're stuck in your job. Like everybody,
Mm-hmm.
even though the market's kind of crazy right now, like there are things out there, and you will attract those positions that you're meant to work in the more that you stand in
Mm.
your power and know what your worth is. And I think you have to find the balance between like, is this impacting me enough where it's literally making me not want to go to work? And if it is, you need to do something about it, because your mental health is not worth having to work in an environment where you spend so much time having to
Mm.
deal with things that are completely draining you. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
it's not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think going back to that example of the person, asking yourself like why this is happening, I think that and tell me if you've had this experience, but like there's obviously there's some self awareness there. Like, oh, okay, this person's like irritating me, but maybe there's room, maybe or maybe not. Maybe there's room to share that with that person in some way or someone else, or to like maybe have them, not to change them, because I think that's the wrong approach. Like you can't expect to change anyone, but I think like figuring out why that is, and then maybe it's just their communication style or expectations. Maybe there's like a relatively easy solution, right? Like maybe there's something that just um maybe there's something that you can change there, or maybe not, right? Maybe you have to like, maybe this person just, anything you've tried has not solved this issue,
Yeah.
right? So
And I
I
think
don't know.
that also ties back to like what I had mentioned earlier. We talked a little bit about like not only just like setting boundaries, but speaking up. Like you can't expect anything to change if you're not going to use your voice.
Yeah.
And so yes, like you absolutely should not just be like, all right, I'm done. Like don't say anything at all.
Yeah.
But that's also around like having boundaries for yourself and using
Yeah.
them in a way that protects your energy. Like, hey,
Mm.
like this is how I feel when I go into a meeting with you, or talk to your boss and say like, this person is really rubbing me the wrong way.
Mm. Mm.
And I think you should always make sure that you kind of exhaust all efforts before just kind of throwing in the towel right away.
Mm.
But the more that I think you put yourself first, the easier
Mm.
it'll be to see if it's a long-term situation that you need to deal with, or if it's something that can be mitigated.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, there's different steps here, right? Like we sort of, if we jumped around a little bit in the conversation, but I think there's probably some pyramid here that we could create of um,
Totally.
like little actions to bigger actions to like, okay, leave the job, right? So there's definitely some pyramid of, you know, uh, like just progress here, and tests and experiments you can do, and then obviously there's sort of there's a point where you have to be like, okay, well, I've tried all these things, it's not working, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I completely
Uh,
agree.
there's a book as well I read a while back. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called The Power. It's called The Power of Full Engagement, and it's just basically energy management versus time management.
Yeah.
So it's literally just talking about, okay, everyone's talking about productivity and like making time and blah blah blah, but actually instead of prioritizing for how much time you have, prioritizing around how much energy you have. And
Yes.
I think this is like way more relevant now with COVID, where it's like your work and your life is just like sort of blended together, and like it's just like you don't really have that separation. So uh, that energy part is really clear because people can see that and you can feel that more clearly. So I'll link back to that in the show notes, but I think it's sort of along the lines of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's all about protecting your energy, because
Mm.
that is going to destroy your ability to do anything if you don't.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever
Yeah.
heard of the book, The Presence Process, but that is a really
Mm.
good one to really help you become more mindful of just the way that we do things every day. And
Mm.
yeah, I just think those two are just really good options to look at for people who really want to start, who just really want to start being more intentional about the way that they're spending their energy, especially when it comes to working.
For sure, for sure. Awesome. Well, I think we went over a lot, and we could probably get a lot deeper into a lot of these topics, but I think we're coming up on
Agreed.
time here. Um, so maybe to wrap things up, I know you're doing a lot of coaching right now, and you're starting a women's group, I think, from today or tomorrow, and you're also obviously doing some career coaching, which doesn't sound like it's your main thing right now. So I'll let you talk about like, yeah, what kind of coaching are you doing? What are you sharing with people, and anything else around that you'd like to talk about?
So I am doing career coaching still, but I think it's interesting because the people that I tend to work with,
Mm-hmm.
mostly it's people who either, just got laid off and just need help figuring out where to start. They haven't
Mm-hmm.
looked for a job in a while. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times I feel like I start working with people who are just miserable in their job and really want to find just like that, like position that aligns with their energy and their values. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the sessions will start doing career coaching, but then they kind of go more into like empowerment and life coaching, almost like gaining the self confidence that you need to find the job that you're worth. So I do a lot of that. And then I'm also doing women's empowerment coaching. And then, like you mentioned, I'm launching a women's self-love circle that I'm super excited about. Um, and I've also gotten into energy healing. So I don't know if I told you, but I do like energy healing events and meditation events. So just really focus on helping people become more mindful and present in their everyday life. And I think it ties to career coaching too. You know, it's how you can really make sure you're landing at the right company by making sure that your energy and values just align with the people and companies that you're talking with.
For sure. And are you doing all this online mostly, or is there some offline stuff
Yes.
too?
And I'm
Yeah.
actually getting a little antsy. Like I'm looking at opening up an actual location to do more energy healing just because I
Cool.
am spending a lot of time at home. I mean, I've started co-working more, but yeah,
You're in Austin,
everything's
right? Or
been yeah, awesome.
yeah, yeah. I feel like there's a lot of opportunity and demand for that in Austin as well. So,
There's almost like too much for me. I'm like, can I just move to a little remote place in the middle of the desert?
well, you've got plenty of options in Texas, so
Yes, I do.
shouldn't be too hard to find. Cool. Well, look, I'll link back to all that stuff. I mean, people listening in, if they like your vibe, they like what you're saying, then they can explore all those things that you're offering
Yeah,
and connect with you. So, I'll share all that in the
that sounds
notes.
good.
Cool. All right,
Amazing.
Kerri. Well, it's been nice and insightful having this conversation, and yeah, let's do it again sometime. And yeah, excited for the launch of your group as well. So good luck with that, and yeah, I'll share that as well if anyone's interested. So
Cool. Thanks so much. It was great chatting with you.
thanks. Alrighty. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation today with Kerri. I learned a lot about her story and burnout and some really practical stuff in there as well that we went over. So I'll link back to some of the books that we mentioned, and also, of course, some of the coaching sites, including Kerris, that Kerri is on right now, and her website and everything. If you enjoyed or related to some of what she was saying, and like you want to have a call with her or talk to her more about some of these topics, or maybe even get some coaching, then please check out her website and everything else on there. And I would definitely encourage you to yeah, set up a quick call with her if any of this is happening to you right now in your life. Otherwise, that is about all for me today. I have a few conversations actually around burnout that I'm having. I think my next conversation, or one in a couple of weeks, is going to be about burnout. So this is a big topic for me personally. I've been through burnout myself a couple times, and I think many people are experiencing this. So I think we'll probably have some episodes on this, diving a bit deeper, because it's such an important topic. So, all right. Well, I hope you have a great rest of the week. Don't forget to take some time out for yourself, and I will see you next time.